Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Let's go over the 8-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. I do apologize, this video is coming out later than usual. I usually get it up early in the AM, but I was swamped with NASCAR stuff to do and we got 3 sports going on, so I was very busy and I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to get an MLB video out, but my plan was to make videos every single day and I didn't want to break that, so here we are making this video for you guys, and it's a pretty good slate, so I am looking forward to it. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be here all season long trying to help you guys become better MLB DFS players. And I cover other sports as well. And speaking of other sports, I'll be going live for NASCAR at around 2 p.m. Eastern today. So if you want to come in, check it out, ask me questions, feel free to do so. So if you're going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And if you don't follow me on social media, ChrisPennell16 on Twitter, CPenn16 on IG. And if you want to support content over on Patreon, it's always much appreciated. We got 300 plus people there. We got the Discord chat, and you get access to all the extra stuff I put out each and every single day. I just show you guys a glimpse of my spreadsheet here. But if you're interested, like I said, links in the description below. If you're not, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. I'm going to try to make this video a little bit quicker because it's already 10 in the morning, and the slate locks in less than 3 hours, so not going to be much time to watch this video, so I don't want to make it too long. But anyway, we'll start up top. We have Jacob deGrom. He is our ace of the slate. He is very expensive, but I do think he is worth it. He's going up against the Marlins, and we typically like to pick on the Marlins. Now, I know they've had some pretty decent games so far this season, but overall, it's just Jacob deGrom. He can overpower any single lineup. He's destroyed the Braves this season twice, which obviously are much better than the Marlins. He last started, I believe he scored nearly 30 fantasy points, struck out 10, went over 100 pitches, so pitch count's not going to be an issue here, and he's by far one of the best pitchers on the entire slate, obviously, but in the entire league. Him, Garrett Cole, Shane Bieber, Max Scherzer, he's in that group, and he's just been absolutely fantastic so far this season, and he was fantastic last year as well, getting a lot of respect in Vegas. Only 2.71 runs against him, 70% chance for the win, and 7.5 strikeouts. And if you guys are looking at his numbers last season, obviously elite, 32% K rate, limits the hard contact, less than a 30% hard contact rate, and less than 0.9 home runs per 9 innings, 32% K rate, gets that matchup versus the Marlins. If you're looking at their splits last season versus righties, yes, they got some new people in their lineup, but it's still a pretty weak overall roster. 25% K rate, only a 75 WRC plus, 283 WOBA, and a 124 ISO. And I will start using 2020 statistics soon. I might do like a little blend, but it's still, that's a really small sample size, so I'm hesitant to, but I'm thinking I'm going to have to start using it soon. So I'll let you guys know when I do start updating the statistics for 2020, but as of right now, I still have some older stats blended with some 2020 statistics as well. But Jacob deGrom, I think you should probably make it a priority to fit him in your lineups today. I think there's enough value on this slate with Detroit to be able to fit him in quite easily. If you want to pivot off of deGrom and save over 2,000, we have Sonny Gray at 9,400. He's going up against a Brewers team who just really strikes out a ton versus righties. We saw Trevor Bauer just absolutely carve this lineup up for 12 strikeouts just a couple of nights ago. And the Brewers, it's a very small sample size, but they're striking out, about 30% of the time versus righties right now. They are just getting absolutely destroyed. Their lineup is just not that great. Obviously, you got Christian Yelich, but I like Sonny Gray here as a pivot. And speaking of guys who've been fantastic this season, like I said with Jacob deGrom, Sonny Gray's been almost better for the most part. He's got a .96 ERA. He scored 30 fantasy points, 39 fantasy points, and 27 fantasy points. He's racked up 9, 11, and 8 strikeouts. Pitch count was over 100 in his last start. So I actually like Sonny Gray a lot as a pivot, and you're going to be able to spend up for more bats as well if you're going down from deGrom. I think deGrom's probably the cash game pitcher, but Sonny Gray's an excellent pivot, and they have similar upside, and he's had a 37 fantasy point outing already this season, or 39 fantasy points versus Chicago, so I have no problem at all. If you want to save some money, go with Sonny Gray and just load up your bats even more. And the matchup versus the Brewers, like I said, last year they strike out a ton versus righties, and they're doing it again this season, and obviously you lost Lorenzo Cain and Ryan Braun, so overall, the lineup's not too scary, and they do strike out quite a bit. So I like the spot for Sonny Gray in tournaments. Then Brandon Woodruff, another tournament play. I think Andrew Heaney and Jacob deGrom might be the way to be going cash games, although you can make a case for Woodruff in cash as well. But I do like Woodruff here. He's been pretty solid to start the season. But he's not been as good as deGrom and Gray, but he does have one outstanding start versus Pittsburgh when he scored 37 fantasy points and struck out 10. In his last start versus the White Sox, he was looking pretty good, but he did give up 8 hits. He gave up 2 runs and only struck out 6, but still his pitch count's around 100, and I think he's going to be fine here since he does have some lefties. But Woodruff, I mean, he's a good pitcher. He's got a 29% K rate last season, limited the hard contact, and the Reds don't scare me too much. There's some slates where I like the Reds versus righties because they got some decent left-handed cheap options, but I'm kind of liking Woodruff more than I would like the Reds here, and I think he can certainly overpower this lineup, and he's got double-digit K upside, so I don't mind Woodruff in tournaments. I think you could play him in cash games, but he does feel a little bit more tournament-y to me. But Vegas likes him. He's a favorite, only 3.63 runs against him, 6 strikeouts, so I think he checks out as a fine play. Then Andrew Heaney, he's probably going to be your cash game SP2. He comes in at 7,800, and I like using lefties versus Texas. They just tend to strike out a ton versus lefties. If you're looking at their splits last season, they strike out 26.1% of the time to lefties. They got some pop, 203 ISO, 321 WOBA. And the thing with Heaney is he gives up a lot of hard contact, 47% hard contact, 1.9 home runs per 9 innings, and a 43% fly ball rate. Yeah, that's a little scary, it's for sure, especially against Texas, because they do got some pop. But for the most part, I like the strikeout upside here, and he's below 8K. I think we're getting a good price tag. And he had a 29% K rate last season. Now, he does give up power to both sides of the plate, but the strikeout rate's what's getting me, and I think he's a fine option here as SP2. And he's been pretty solid to start the season. He scored 19, 15, and 16 fantasy points, and we saw his pitch count go all the way up to 87 last start, which it was hovering around the mid-60s. So it's nice to see him go almost to 90 pitches, so I don't think we're going to have any workload constrictions here. I think that's the right word. So I like Heaney. I think he's fine. I like the strikeout upside as well. And I think we can just move on to the bats at this point. And I don't have as many bats listed here as usual because I said I wanted to make this a shorter video. So we're going to keep it nice and short. And the cool thing is I think we actually have some lineups out, which I haven't updated on my spreadsheet yet. But I think we might have a couple of lineups out. But I'm pretty sure the Twins are currently, because I do have Alex Avila here and Mitch Garver. No longer an option, but I only have one catcher listed here, and I think he's just going to be the guy you plug in. I expect him to be pretty heavy chalk on DraftKings. He's only 3,000, and he's just got some pretty good splits here versus right-handed pitching, and the Twins are going to be one of the top stacks in the entire slate. If you look at Avila's splits versus righties last season, he has a 227 ISO, 432 slugging. He strikes out a ton, doesn't have a great batting average, but I like the power upside here, and he's just a cheap part of that Twin stack that I like quite a bit. Now, for the Royals pitcher, we don't have as much of a sample size to use here, so I don't have anything listed, and we also don't have anything for 2019. But I am not shying away from any of the Twins here. I think you can just fully load up this entire lineup. Dropping down to first base, we got 3 options here. We have Mitch Moreland if you're spending up. It's not really that much of a spend-up option, but more of a mid-range. But Mitch Moreland, 4,300 going against Matt Shoemaker. I'm just not really too concerned with Matt Shoemaker here, and I think Boston's one of the better stacks on the slate, and Vegas would agree. I believe they had the highest team total in the slate at 5.2. And if we're looking at Moreland's splits versus righties last season, he had a 287 ISO, 549 slugging, and a 260 batting average. I think you can pretty much just load up a good portion of this Red Sox lineup, but I do prefer the lefties if you're just looking for specifics instead of just full stacking. I prefer lefties, but I think the entire lineup is in play. I just don't like the righties as much. Then CJ Cron, 3,100. I think he's going to be one of the better options on today's slate. Sorry, I had the wrong pitcher listed for Pittsburgh. It's Stephen Brault, the lefty. I apologize. I didn't realize I had the wrong pitcher. I knew who they were going up against, so nothing changes here. But love CJ Cron versus lefties, and he's just dirt cheap. Going to be hitting cleanup. He busted out of his slump recently, and I just think he's a really good option. I think we're going to see a heavy ownership on CJ Cron because Detroit. If you're looking for value on this slate, especially if you're using Jacob deGrom, you're going to have to use some of these Detroit righties, and I think they're just in an excellent spot. If you're looking at Cron splits versus lefties last season, he had a 310 ISO, 160 WRC+, 326 batting average, and a 636 slugging. And we like all the righties here versus Stephen Brault. If you're looking at his numbers, a 184 ISO, giving up less than a 20% K rate, double-digit walk rate. You can pretty much load up these righties just to fit in your top-end pitching or just fit in some higher-end stacks and then just mix in Detroit as well. And then if you don't like Cron, you can go to Miguel Cabrera at 2,600. He's going to grade out as one of the better value plays on the slate just because he's dirt cheap, going to be hitting third. And I like all the righties versus Stephen Brault. And Miguel Cabrera had some pretty solid numbers versus lefties last season. Not a ton of power, but a 216 ISO is not too bad. 154 WRC+, and a 340 batting average. I think both are excellent options. If you're in a pinch, go with Cabrera. If it doesn't matter, you can spend up a little bit more for CJ Cron. I think there's more upside with Cron. And then dropping down to second base / outfield, technically, we have Cavan Biggio, 4,900, going up against Nathan Eovaldi. And he's fine if you want to spend up. Personally, I'm going to probably end up seeing myself go with either Scope or Arraez. I believe that's how you say his name, Arraez. But if you are spinning up, I don't mind Biggio here versus Eovaldi. We know he gives up some power. If you're looking at splits versus lefties last season, a 331 ISO given up. He's got a decent strikeout rate, 23%, but there's definitely power to be had here, especially with the lefties. And come on, Biggio hits righties very well, so I definitely think he's an option if you are spending up, leading off for the Blue Jays. If you don't want to spend up, I don't mind Arraez here at 4,100 going against the Royals. I think all the lefties and even the righties are in play here. And if you're looking at Rays splits versus righties last season, only a 7% strikeout rate, 132 ISO, near 400 on base percentage, 136 WRC plus, and a 355 batting average. I like all the Twins here, and I definitely think he is certainly in play. And one of my more favorite options, if you're just looking for a dirt cheap, we have Jonathan Scope at 3,200. He hits lefties very, very well if you're looking at his splits. 286 ISO, 136 WRC plus, and near 300 batting average. Does strike out quite a bit, but there is power upside here. And Stephen Bro, I do like the righties against him. And I think Detroit is one of the best value stacks on the entire slate. If you're looking at my top stacks tool that I have on my spreadsheet, Detroit's by far the best value on this slate, just overall for their lineup, because I believe their starting lineup, the average salary is less than $3,000. I just checked. So yeah, they're going to be really good value on this slate. They have a team total of near 5. What's it at exactly? 4.88. So definitely like the value we get with the Tigers, and it definitely makes spending up for pitching today not too bad. And then going down to third base, we have Rafael Devers. If you're spending all the way up, I love Devers. I like the lefties versus Matt Shoemaker. And they have the highest team total on the slate. And if you're looking at Devers splits versus righties last season, we have elite numbers, a 330 batting average, only a 15% K rate, 153 WRC plus, over a 600 slugging, and near 300 ISO. If you got the money for it, I like Devers. But if you need a value option, I don't mind Travis Shaw or Marvin Gonzalez here. Travis Shaw is in the same game, and I like the lefties versus Nathan Eovaldi. Should draw a pretty good spot in the lineup. I got him projected batting third right now. And if you're looking at his splits last season, they were pretty awful. But I do like the lefties here versus Eovaldi. Like I said, he gives up a ton of power to them, a 331 ISO. And I don't mind Shaw if you're just looking for a bargain home run on this slate. Or if you just want to stick with the Twins, which I think is one of the better stacks on the slate, we got Marvin Gonzalez. Now, I prefer him versus lefties, where he's got some better numbers overall. He's got a 3 or near 300 batting average versus them in a 167 ISO. But versus righties, the numbers do fall off a cliff a little bit. But I like all the Twins here, and he's also pretty cheap, and he's eligible at first base and third base as well. So I don't hate going with Marwin here. Then dropping down to shortstop, we got a couple of options in Xander Bogaerts, Jorge Polanco, and Nico Goodrum. I'm really liking Polanco and Goodrum, but if you are spending up, I don't mind Bogaerts here. He's got good splits versus lefties and righties. I do prefer the lefties versus Matt Shoemaker, but if you're stacking up Boston, this price on Bogaerts is pretty good, and they have the highest team total on the slate. And he's got good numbers versus righties and lefties, actually pretty similar numbers. He had a higher batting average versus righties last season, and Shoemaker doesn't scare me too much, so I don't mind Bogaerts. But if you're stacking up the Twins, which I feel like I'd be more inclined to stack up the Twins than the Red Sox today, just because, I don't know, you guys know I love stacking the Twins, so I'll recommend them any chance I get. But I like Jorge Polanco, 4,200. Not a big power guy, but he's certainly one that can get on base. He's got a low strikeout rate. And if you're looking at his splits versus righties, 207 ISO, 306 batting average, only a 14% K rate, and I just like all the Twins here, switch hitters, so he's always going to have the favorable position versus the pitcher, and I think they make one of the best stacks on the slate at a pretty good price as well. So I like Jorge Polanco. Nico Goodrum, 3,600. If you're looking at splits versus lefties, they're actually pretty darn good. He's got a 361 batting average versus lefties last season, 411 on base percentage, 143 WRC plus. He's going to be leading off here. He's dirt cheap. Tiger Stacks makes it, like I've said before, it makes it really easy to fit in a guy like DeGrom today, and I actually think they're in a really good spot as well. Then going down to the outfield, Mike Trout, 5,900. He's pretty much in the player pool every single time, but he's going up against a righty, so I'm going to single him out. Now, he's going up against a really good righty in Lance Lynn, so I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park whatsoever, but Trout's just too good versus right-handed pitching. He's a 188 WRC plus, a 300 batting average, 682 slugging, 379 ice. I mean, the numbers are just too good to leave him off, and I'm not sure what his ownership's going to be. I can't imagine it's going to be too high, but if you have the dough for some reason, I don't hate it versus Lance Lynn. He did give up a 175 ISO to righties last season, so he actually gave up more power to righties. Now, the strikeout rate's 15% higher to righties than it is versus lefties, but it does come with a little bit more power given up, and Mike Trout can certainly get a hold of one. I think he's for GPPs only, but I would always feel safe with Mike Trout in my lineup, so I think he's in play because you're getting like 2 reverse splits, righties going up against each other in terms of power, so don't hate Trout there. Nelson Cruz, I prefer him versus lefties, but it's hard not to like Cruz every single slate. He still has elite numbers versus righties, over a 300 batting average and near 300 ISO, and I just like all the Twins here, and it's Nelson Cruz. He seems to get better with age. He smashes righties, he smashes lefties. If you got the money for it, if you're snacking the Twins, you can't leave off Mr. Nelson Cruz. Max Kepler, one of my favorite plays on this slate, pretty much every single time. But 4,500, did homer last night, so did Nelson Cruz, and he gets a matchup versus a righty, and Kepler crushes righties. He crushes lefties too, but he's great versus righties as well. 281 ISO, only 17% K rate, 118 WRC plus. Kepler's going to be one of the top plays on the slate. Eddie Rosario in the same boat. I prefer Kepler if you're picking one, but these guys are pretty much similar plays. They're both low strikeout guys with good power versus righties. They also hit lefties well too. But both are excellent plays, and if you want to just use all two or use all three in the outfield and Cruz, Kepler, Rosario, I would not fault you for that. Then Michael Conforto, he just seems a bit cheap here at 3,700, going up against Pablo Lopez. Lopez is a guy that will struggle with lefties. His strikeout rate's over 20% to righties, 18% to lefties, gives up over a 200 ISO to lefties. I think you can use some of these Mets lefties. I think Brandon Nimmo is playable as well. I didn't put him on here because I didn't love him, but I think he's also playable. But I like Conforto here. He smashes righties. Last season he had a 280 ISO. 141 WRC plus, 260 batting average, just overall really solid numbers. So I definitely think Conforto is in play. Then Alex Verdugo, 3,300. I think he's one of the better value options on the entire slate. He's only 3,300, going to be leading off. He's been playing pretty well. Highest team total on the slate for Boston, and I like the lefties here versus Matt Shoemaker, so I think he's fine. Verdugo last season, not amazing numbers, but 281 ISO to righties. He actually hit lefties pretty well. 327 batting average versus lefties compared to righties with the 281, but only a 12% K rate and going to be leading off, so I like the price tag quite a bit. But I think this can be it for the video, guys. It was a lot shorter than usual, but I wanted to get this out in a timely manner. You guys got about 2 hours, so I do apologize for that. But appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't already, make sure you leave a like. Check out NASCAR if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.